Hello, I'm Stephanie Kennan with McGuire Woods Consulting, and I'm going to talk about the basics of Medicare reimbursement. But first, I want to start with a policy update. The device sector has fought very hard to find a way to have a presumptive Medicare coverage and payment for new devices. Legislation has been drafted in several Congresses. It's never gone anywhere. The Trump administration finalized a rule at the end of their administration that would have allowed for tentative Medicare coverage and payment for breakthrough technologies. The Biden administration, however, put a hold on that policy on March 16th and is holding the rule for review. That review will go through till May. At the time of the hold, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, said they were concerned that there might be even more breakthrough technologies that would qualify under the rule than previously anticipated. So they want time to think about it. A number of rules that were finalized towards the ends of the Trump administration have been reviewed, put on hold. Most have gone forward, and in some cases, they've gone forward with the understanding that the current administration, is in the process of making some changes to it that we'll probably see towards the end of the first year that they're in office. This is not an uncommon occurrence when there's a change in administrations. It's not an anti-Trump move. It's not an anti-device move. It's simply a new administration who wants to look at things and perhaps put their own thumbprints on a policy. So while we're waiting for that to happen, all devices have to go through the same bumpy coverage road for reimbursement for Medicare and commercial insurance. Technically, after obtaining FDA approval, commercial treatments can start right away. The truth is, however, as most of you know, that only a small pool of patients who have the ability to pay out of pocket will be able to afford these new treatments and procedures until coverage and reimbursement catches up with them. In Medicare, you have to work on both sides of the coin, coverage and reimbursement, in order to get the program to pay a claim. The first stop, however, for anyone is to go to the AMA, the American Medical Association, and their current procedural terminology code committee. You need a CPT code to ensure providers receive uniform information about a device. Many new devices get a Category 3 code, which is considered, the device is considered experimental. That code has some limitations. For example, TRICARE does not want to cover anything that's considered experimental, but that code, even under Category 3, can be an important start. And eventually you can go back to the CPT coding committee and get your device recategorized after you've had more experience with it and you can say that it's not experimental. The other nice thing about the CPT process is that you can get physician specialties and physicians who know your device really actively engaged in talking to other physicians about it. So it's a good way to start off. Once you have your CPT code, then you have a strategic decision to make concerning Medicare. Is there a national coverage decision that you can use for coverage of your device? If not, do you want to seek one? And if you want an alternative to a national coverage decision process, what is that? That is to go to every Medicare contractor, the MACs, and go to them one by one to get coverage. The national coverage decision is controlled by CMS itself, and it takes about a year to get through. And if successful, it covers the entire program, you're done. If it's not successful, it's very, very hard to recover from a negative decision or a coverage that has some restrictions and limitations on it. Very hard to recover from that. The local coverage determination process, the LCDs, is longer. It can take sometimes up to 4 years to get to every MAC, to do something. The MACs do not have to agree. They frequently do, but they don't have to. And the upside is also, if you get a bad decision in one place, you can still work on getting a better decision somewhere else. And you can always go back to that first one once you get a different decision from somebody else. It is arduous and it is long. Some MACs are known as early adopters, particularly for certain kinds of devices, while others are not. And many people will go after the early adopters first. The other positive is that many of these MACs are related to private commercial insurance. And once the Medicare side is considering something or is covering something, then the commercial side will take a look at it, and vice versa. So there are some benefits there. I've had clients go the LCD route and have a medical director stumble over a national coverage decision that they think fits, and coincidentally would not allow this new device to be paid because it wouldn't fit a certain kind of limitation. In those instances, I've had to work with CMS in Baltimore, their career staff, as well as the medical directors, and get them all talking to each other in order for them to understand what's going on. In one instance, I actually had CMS was very helpful in issuing guidance to the medical directors, basically saying this national coverage decision doesn't really apply here, so don't even think about bringing it up. So sometimes you have to do a little yin and yang and get them to work together. I would like to take note of an argument that you could bring up, but isn't necessarily one that's going to tip it all over in your favor, although many people think it will. I've had many clients who want to go and argue that their new device is going to save the Medicare program money. And it may well save the Medicare program lots of money, but Medicare can't take into consideration for terms of coverage or reimbursement that a device is going to save money. And if you think about it, you don't want a program that simply covers things that save money. You want them to cover anything that has true value to the patient. I had a client recently who did not take my advice and went in and went over and over and over about how their device would save money, till the point where the medical director for the MAC said, we got that point, we can't take it into consideration, but nice try. So mention it, but don't dwell on it. And in truth, the only figures that really matter are the CMS programs, their calculations, or those from the Office of Management and Budget. So you can have the best calculations about how much money you're going to save Medicare, and it still really isn't going to matter. At the same time you're working on coverage, you need to work on reimbursement, and CMS will automatically go towards what is this new device like, and how do we pay for that old device so that we can make the payments similar. That's not really helpful when you think you have a new breakthrough technology, or you have a brand new way of doing something, and is better for lots of different reasons for the patient. But that's what human nature is, and that's what CMS tends to try to do, try to treat like things like together, even though you're sitting there saying, but I'm not like that. I had a client for which the CMS career staff wanted to make the payment of a really, truly breakthrough technology, just like a device that had been around for about 20 years. What we had to get the CMS staff to focus on, and ultimately we ended up going to the political staff, the political appointees, and getting them to focus on, was the different resources this new device needed, which were significantly greater than the resources of the old device, because they weren't really similar. So that argument helped sway the day about where to initially start the reimbursement for this device. And once you do have reimbursement, it is something that you have to go back to over and over and over again, because CMS will look at the volume of claims and what were they really kind of landing. Was it way up here at $25,000 where you thought it was going to be, or was it really at 10? So you need to keep an eye on the reimbursement process even after you've received your initial reimbursement. In addition, there are times when you need something that you think Medicare at Baltimore is not necessarily going to be able to price out well. You can go to the carriers, the MACs, and ask them to do carrier pricing. And they will frequently look at something and come up with a price for it that is only good for their area. And usually these are instances in which you have some certain circumstances that may not necessarily be national circumstances, but you can always go to the carriers for different pricings. Medicare publishes reimbursements and annual payment rules. The proposed rules come out usually in the early summer, late spring, and there's a public comment period. And it's very important that you comment if it's appropriate for your device, because without that comment, in it, and getting others who know your device to comment, then there's nothing to counter whatever they may have put in the rule, or to reinforce a point that you want reinforced in the rule. So the public comment period is extremely important. CMS will not meet with you during the public comment period because that's what the public comment period is for. You can get around that a little bit by saying you want to talk about a larger issue, and then while you're there, you can mention some of your issues, but don't expect them to react if it has to do with the rule. They're very, very careful about that. I want to close with two stories. One is I had not a device, but a wound care product that their reimbursement was slashed significantly when the final rule was published. And that was because something that came up in the public comments about this particular category of products was taken to heart by CMS, so they did a different kind of calculation, and it was unexpected. This particular product decided that the company decided they weren't going to be able to provide the product to the Medicare market at the reimbursement level. We went in and talked to the career staff who, quite frankly, said the following: there are winners and losers in every rule, and you lost. So we then went to the political staff, and we went to their home state senators and had their home state senators call the political staff. But we didn't go to our meeting with the political staff empty-handed. We went with a plan. We went with a suggestion about how to fix this. And in trying to fix it, you have to understand two things. They're not going to reopen the rule, and they can't make a fix for one product. So whatever solution you're trying to propose has to be applicable to all products in that category. We were able to come up with a solution that they didn't like, but they liked the direction of. So we worked together for 6 weeks on a solution with the political staff. And some of the career staff were brought into it. And we were able to lock in a higher payment for 2 years for this particular product. Although they missed the first quarter, they were still happy with the outcome of it. And again, CMS was really adamant they didn't want to talk about it unless we had a solution. They didn't have to like the solution, but we had a solution. And it became the basis of everything else. The second thing I'd like to say is that I recently worked with a client that just reinforced something that happens frequently. There's no coordination between the FDA approval process and the Medicare coverage and reimbursement process. It's handled by different people in most companies, but sometimes it can pose problems. I had a client recently who called me and said, CMS made a mistake. They picked up this terminology, the technology from our 510K. We're not really like that technology, and they're now applying a national coverage decision on that technology to us. Well, that isn't a mistake. CMS has only one thing to go by, and that was the 510K and the predicate product in the 510K. And this product used that technology, but also had other technologies with it. So they felt they were very different once they got to Medicare. So we had many conversations with Medicare about the national coverage decision that limited the use of this product. And the national coverage decision said it had to be used in a hospital. This device could actually be used in a physician's office quite safely. We spent about 9 months talking to CMS and the medical directors. And finally, CMS agreed to send out a guidance saying that this particular product could be paid on a claim-by-claim basis using the CPT code they had. And we worked out what the justifications would be for using this device in the physician's office versus in the hospital. So it's something that went slightly out of the bounds. But nevertheless, CMS was quite happy to work on it because it was an innovative product, and they wanted to make sure Medicare recipients had access to it. I'm going to close with the obvious. Coding, coverage, and reimbursement are all interrelated, and it's not a linear process to getting them all together. CMS staff is more than willing to work with you if you're willing to work with them, but simply going to them and saying, oh, you're not paying me enough, isn't the way they want to hear the message. What they want to hear is about the value of the product to the patient, not the program, but the patient. They want to know, why is this different and worth Medicare trying to cover and pay for? So with that, I will close, and I'd be happy to take your questions at any time. Thank you.